Kate is walking through the market, and then she heard something.
It was about 3 weeks ago on Sunday morning, and I was early, so the market was being set up. And there was a chap setting his stall up and another passerby, and the two of them were having an open conversation about children in the UK being trafficked through our social services or children's services. So children being traded in the way that the market trades hot dogs, food, gifts, whatever. And I kept on walking and kind of couldn't quite believe what I was hearing because sort of I knew it to be true, and then stopped and turned around and went and thanked them because there was this most enormous relief that the situation that children are in, the predatorial environment that we're living in, and the alignment of that with mine and my son's personal situation was just being talked about in the open, no longer hidden in papers, in reports or conspiracy theories or whatever. It was just being talked about in the open on a sunny Sunday morning. And although it was disgusting, it's also relieving to know that, right, now this has hit the street, it's out in the open air. You can't stop what those market traders are talking about.
And what happened next?
They thanked me for thanking them. They were actually also ended up being relieved that I knew what they were saying to be true. You know, there was like this mutual, oh, we're not alone. No, we're not alone. And yes, again, like my relief was just even more cemented.
She didn't know she needed that, couldn't have asked for it, and that, it turns out, is the whole thing. The blessing she couldn't have designed. But to understand why that moment mattered the way it did, we have to go back.
I'm Kate Markland. I'm mum to 12-year-old Gabriel and former physiotherapist, and now I am a co-author of the Adventures of Gabriel series with my son, and also inspire other children to be the heroes of their own story. I guess what's really hard is to associate that word phenomenal with me. My granddad observed when I was quite young, swimming, that I seemed to be an endurance athlete, not a sprinter. And I think that's exactly what is presented to be true, that I'm an endurance athlete in life, in that I sort of recognize that I just keep going. But that also means you don't necessarily stop to take stock or associate the word phenomenal with yourself, because you just keep doing what you do. You just keep plugging away. You just keep going. And I guess the simplest way to answer that question is, again, going back to my grandfather. He was a great storyteller and monologuer, oral storyteller, and I would ask for them again and again and again. And Kipling's If was one in particular that I'd ask him to repeat.
If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you. If you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too. If you can wait and not be tired by waiting, or being lied about, don't deal in lies. Or being hated, don't give way to hating, and yet don't look too good, nor talk too wise. If you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two impostors just the same, if you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools, or watch the things you gave your life to broken, and stoop and build 'em up with worn-out tools. If you can make one heap of all your winnings and risk it on one turn of pitch and toss, and lose, and start again at your beginnings, and never breathe a word about your loss. If you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your turn long after they are gone, and so hold on when there is nothing in you except the will which says to them, hold on. If you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings nor lose the common touch, if neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you, if all men count with you but none too much, If you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it. And, which is more, you'll be a man, my son.
Not saying that it's not hard, it's not brutal, it's not tough, but I recognise I don't quit. I'd stepped away really from much practical physiotherapying to running the business, and I'm starting to mentor other people in how to run a clinic. So my everyday would be dropping my son off at nursery or school, going into the practice, having a task list of what I'd already got planned to do, and I sort of had a rhythm to the week, and then dealing with whatever needed to be dealt with during the day on top of that, looking after the team, making sure the team were happy, listening to the clients, making sure they were happy, making sure the bills got paid, thinking about where we were going to go next. Then I would swim. We belonged to a master swimming club, and I had dreams of that perhaps one day, if I kept swimming and kept running, I might still consider myself an athlete and try for, age group aqualathon. I'm not quick enough on a bike, but running and swimming I was doing respectably, so I thought I might try for the GB team for my age group for aqualathon. That was sort of what was on my mind, that one day that might be possible amongst it all.
When Gabriel was small, then, what were your dreams for him and for his future?
We did a lot of sport because sport had been very important to me for finding confidence, self-belief. A girl I used to swim with when we were kids, I'm still friends with, a lady, and she'd told me, she had boys, and she'd told me, you need to exercise them and feed them, and then your life's easy. So that had really landed. And so we did a lot of sport together, volunteer, helping out at athletics or whatever, so that you had a sense of identity, achievement, accomplishment, can do, resilience. We'd often joke that some of the sports he liked were things I knew nothing about, but it doesn't matter. You just try it all, and what sticks lands. And we would create stories, and we would do some crafts and having dialogue with a variety of people, so you feel sort of socially confident. And I just had this idea that when you're 18 and you go off to university, you know how to cook a spaghetti bolognese, you know how to look after yourself, you know how to say your pleases and thank yous, you know how to handle situations that are going to come in life, and you know how to lead yourself and try and be the best version of yourself.
That was the plan. That was who she was building. And then December came.
December the 1st, 2023. And Gabriel and I have gone to stay with a friend in the north of the country because we can't cope with the abuse that we're living with any longer. And by that, I mean from how we were being treated by the state as well. I'd left letters. The 1st of December was a Friday. We'd gone on the Monday, and I'd left letters with correspondence details, which I thought were very civil. There'd been a nationwide manhunt for us. Gabriel's photograph had been given to every single police constabulary in the country. And on the Tuesday, we weren't in hiding. We were staying with a friend. The police found us, but we weren't in hiding. They wanted to speak to Gabriel, so he spoke to them through a ground floor window and just confirmed he was Gabriel and he was fine. And apparently they had absolutely no concerns whatsoever, and reported that back to Gloucestershire, which is the home county we're from. Friday morning, there's a bang, heavy bang. It's 9 o'clock. Gabriel and I were in the kitchen. I was starting to chivying him on to get out. He was still in his pajamas, finish your breakfast, time to get dressed. I don't know how to describe that bang, Amy. It was just sickening. And you just know, you don't even need to look through the door. You just know it's not the neighbour that's come to say hello, or you just know. And you kind of also know that they've not come for a conversation with you because of the intensity of the banging. And Gabriel and I go into the utility room and they just force their way through. It's 2 policemen, all in their body gear, They've got body cams that are flashing. One of them's armed with a taser. They're not interested in conversation with me. They've just come to take Gabriel. And Gabriel had done martial arts since he was really little. He would go to a class with children his age, but he'd also go to a class with teenagers. And those teenagers were never going to hurt him, but you'd always have to level up. And Amy, he was absolutely remarkable because he did just that. He did just that in front of these two police officers. He leveled up like he was in martial arts up against the teenagers, and he turned absolutely like he was in martial arts, and he stood his ground with them. No, 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 no. He got louder and louder and more certain. They asked why, and he told them exactly why he didn't want to go with them. They asked me if Gloucestershire police knew. And I said, yes, but nobody is listening to us. They still didn't stop. One of them grabbed him, and he knew from martial arts how to get free of one man's grip. So he got free of one grown man's grip. He got free of a grown policeman's grip, a 9-year-old little boy, because he's so... Then two of them grab him, and they drag him. He's screaming his head off. The scream is, I don't know how to describe it, sort of blood-curdling. The terror in his eyes. And he's barefoot. They drag him out the front door, down the drive, which is icy. And they've got their van blocking the driveway. The friend we were staying with by now was quick enough to record this. I'm asking, what have I done wrong? They say nothing. I'm asking, what has Gabriel done wrong? They say nothing. And they're opening the back of their police van door, and it's a cage. It's a cage you'd put a terrorist in or a Rottweiler in. Gabriel is screaming his head off, and his eyes, the terror in his eyes as he's looking back at me. And there's nothing I can do. I'm helpless to help my son. There's nothing I can do. And I don't know whether to describe it like the child snatchers in Chitty Chitty Bang Bang when your children are put in a cage, or like when you watch a nature program, and I keep thinking it's like when an orca's got your pup, an apex predator has taken your child, and you are helpless to do anything. You're absolutely helpless. And in disbelief, in absolute disbelief that nobody's actually having a conversation with you. Now, it transpired that they had a court order to remove him, and that court order was allowing them to use force. It gave them permission to use force for a 9-year-old. And that is going to define his life now. That is going to define Gabriel's life. You cannot take a child with armed police and put him in a cage without that being life-defining. How can the judge that permitted that in the first place look his own children in the eye? How would they feel if it was theirs? But once I truly understood there was no negotiation here, and the level of malevolence and malfeasance of what I was up against, I felt I had no choice. But you're not doing this to me. You know, you just have to make that decision. I didn't quite understand anything other than this is absolute evil. This isn't my ending. Because you also realise, if I put myself on the train tracks, you guys do not care. In fact, it would be convenient for you. Well, you're not having that. That is not my story.
We'll be back after a quick break.
Hey there, Phenomenal listeners. It's Amy Boyle. If you're loving the stories and insights on the Speaking of Phenomenal podcast, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or Good Pods. Your 5-star reviews help us reach even more people and keep bringing you great content. Thank you so much for your support and being a part of our phenomenal community. Now back to the show. The police report read back to her the next day said that she had fought off 2 armed officers. She knew then that she was up against something that wouldn't respond to logic or evidence.
I think I very much have held on to knowing that I have to be able to look myself in the mirror every day and know that I could look Gabriel in the eye any day of his life, knowing that he knows, or that I can know I've done my best. You know, you just got to hold that integrity with yourself, because when you realise there's so little integrity in the system, and the things you're kind of indoctrinated to believe are supposed to be there to protect you. You know, we're conditioned that the lawyers, social services, government, things that are there to protect us are not there to protect us at all. They're there to protect themselves. And therefore, you having integrity with yourself and with your child becomes actually a real strength inside you. In the very beginning, it was go for a walk, eat your dinner, even if I hadn't cooked dinner. Then, right, you're alive because you've done some exercise and you've eaten. And back to if, that first verse of if, every single morning. Every single morning, just that first verse of if. So those were the sort of basic survival things.
She didn't know what she was going to do, but she knew what she wasn't going to do. And the system handed her 1 hour a week. The atmosphere of those first calls, before the books, before any plan, what were you holding back so that you could make the most out of your hour?
I actually have recordings of the first four calls that we had. I recorded, but I haven't watched them back, and I don't want to watch them back at the moment. Anyway, didn't want to show him anger. I didn't want to show him anything that would make him any more frightened. I knew I was shell shocked, and there was no way he wasn't going to be. I didn't want him to see how hurt and angry I was, because he couldn't do anything to protect me, particularly. But I didn't want him to see me angry. I didn't want him to see me scared. I didn't want him to see me hurt. He'd have picked up on it because we both were. But I didn't want him to see me ranting and raving. I wanted him to feel hugged. So I'd been into his bedroom. When they told me we could have an hour a week on FaceTime, they mocked me, Amy, about how was I going to speak to a 10-year-old for an hour on FaceTime? At the time, I remember thinking, I can speak to my son for an hour. And also, you have no idea how much he likes a story. Because back to my grandfather, this love of storytelling, Gabriel had always loved. I was a little boy, just as a baby, again at bedtime, stories. So I'd just gone into his bedroom and picked up a very illustrated copy of, it was a Michael Mapergo book called Puffin Keeper, just because it was the book that had the most beautiful pictures in, and lots of them. And we just read and looked at the pictures. And it probably took us about 4 weeks to get through that first book. And Gabriel really liked looking at the pictures and understanding the boy's story, and it worked for us. Then we get on to Treasure Island, and we're reading an illustrated copy of Treasure Island. At the end of Treasure Island, protagonist is called Jim, and Gabriel's grandfather's called Jim. And so by the time we finished Treasure Island, we're a bit tired of reading about Jim's heroics. Let's make up a story where Gabriel's the hero. He just instantly said yes and starts telling me what he wants to do and defeat. In the very beginning, I wrote to him every single day. And then eventually he said to me, Mum, I know you love me. You don't need to write to me every day. And so I wrote to him every week. After about 8 weeks, we got 6 short stories. Been a mess on my desktop. So I put it into a Word document, literally, so I can see my desktop again. Mum, it's a book. It's a book. Like, yeah, right, it's a book. No, Mum, it's a book. So it becomes a book. I've got my own hang-ups about my spelling and grammar from school, but, get over those because of the situation we're in. Again, if we hadn't been in such a diabolical situation, it would never have we'd never have published it as a book. I'd have just got a couple printed from, the local printers. But I've got to do something good. And I now decided spending a bit of money on self-publishing our book is far more value than spending money on lawyers. Because thinking nobody can take that away from Gabriel. Never. Nobody can ever take away that he's got a book. And that was, that was a drive as well. It's like, you're going to feel a sense of pride, a sense of self-worth for the fact we've achieved that. And nobody can ever, ever take that away from you. And I share it with just a child psych that I knew in the US from LinkedIn, and a family friend here who was a former teacher and school inspector and big into kids' creative writing. And both of them come back to me, so from a different perspective, saying exactly the same thing. You need to get this out because it's one child's imagination, although I'm the scribe, it's a child's imagination inspiring other children, and that's precious. So then before you know it, we're in school workshops, and that's exactly what's happening. Children are starting to realise that, hang on, he's 10. Well, I'm 10. I can do it if he can do it. And no 10-year-old has yet said to me they don't want to be a hero of their own story. 318 children have confirmed that the process, that is essentially what Gabriel and I have used over FaceTime for an hour a week, validates what the big developmental psychologists say. And then a friend that's a management consultant kindly looked at our very first book, pulled out exactly the same themes. But it feels like sometimes maybe, Gabriel, we're in this for, you start to think, are we in this for a reason? And are we actually having to live out the power of the meaning of your name because it will be heard? The surnamed Kiani, kings of Persia before the Abrahamic religions, or modern day Iran, is a very significant book. We literally are using storytelling to communicate that children's voices matter and that they need to be heard. He doesn't see this stopping. We've agreed to a book a year and a companion book a year until he's 18. We had our first board meeting last week. And yes, Gabriel is the chief dream officer, we decided, to keep this relevant for 12-year-olds.
How are you setting the agenda between the two of you? And who is setting that agenda these days?
I'm speaking to him this evening, actually. Tonight we have a plan in that we need to confirm the pictures. So when we speak, we usually know a little bit of what we need to do next time. So there's the chat about how was your week, and he tells me whatever he's doing. It's very much this co-creation has cemented the connection. And he does know I do it full time. He said it to me not too long ago. Mum, you do this full time now? Oh, yeah, I do. Why, Mum? Because I'm not quitting. You know I'm not quitting. We don't quit.
Kate continued to find serendipity along the way.
So when our first book came out, it was one of the biggest literature festivals here is in Cheltenham. And it was on. And I went to it. And there was an opportunity to go and listen to Helen Fielding of Bridget Jones. And you and I have Bridget Jones' generation. So I went along and listened to her. And she really was speaking about how as a 20-year-old, she wrote for 20-year-olds and she just put another book out and it was for 50-year-olds. And no, she was not going to write for 20-year-olds as a 50-year-old. She thought that children or teenagers could write their own literature and they were brilliant storytellers. And I'm listening to her and thinking, we're doing this. So I run home, go and get a copy of our book, run back, and the very, very last person in the queue to meet her for a book signing at the end. And I give her two copies with me. She writes all over another, I burst into tears on her. And she writes all over the inside of the book. She didn't know what was going on, but she just knew, dear Gabriel, keep writing, keep telling your stories. If it's your story, just write as if you're writing to a friend. And I show it to all the kids in the schools now, that this is what a major author has said. And then the winter of 25, it was the weekend before Gabriel's birthday. I was literally walking into town to go and buy him his birthday card. I walked past a Bollywood film crew. So again, I know what to do now. I run home, go and get copies of the book. What I'm going to do with them, who I'm going to give them to. And they're probably still sat in a van somewhere. But I think if I don't do anything, I can't do nothing. And I am directed to these two people from the film crew to give the books to. One of them is from Pakistan. But his son is a teacher in Bradford, the same town in the north, where we've done our workshops and where my grandfather was from. And again, you're just like, the serendipity of that. They might well still be sat in a van somewhere, but you just have the sense that you just say yes to all these little opportunities because I've more past a Bollywood film crew ever before, and I might never again. We were allowed to see each other for about 90 minutes recently, and to feel Gabriel hug me and hug me and hug me. And he knew that I'd never given up on him, and I knew he'd never given up on me. But to feel that physically, there was something incredibly reassuring about that. And it certainly gives a sort of confirmation to find another gear to like, come on. We still don't know quite the how we're going to get this over the line, but perhaps don't worry about the how. Just know that you're going to get it over the line because you're committed to it and you're both committed to it.
I was reading that you're preparing for your TED Talk.
I need to prepare for my TED Talk, yes.
All of this is taking years now and synthesizing a message to 18 minutes.
The sort of theme is the importance of empowerment of children, self-leadership in children, which comes back to us remembering that we are nature, humans are predators. This is a very, very predatory environment. You look at what was the conversation in the market, you look at the financials from the Financial Times. This is a highly predatory environment. The stakes are high. Therefore, if we look at nature, a mother seal has to teach her pup to swim. She can't plead to the orca. I've been putting reports and reports into the orca. The orca accepts them, but an apex predator isn't interested. You look at the window, it's the little birds at the minute. The mother bird's got to teach her fledglings to fly. She can't appeal to that cat not to eat them. So I think that's going to be my main message, is remembering that we shouldn't be so complacent. We need to empower our children. We need to teach them self-leadership. We need to teach them how to swim, how to fly. We need to give them their wings. Because if we end up separated from them by an apex predator, we have to be able to trust them and trust ourselves that they won't be eaten because they're equipped.
Children don't stop talking all at once. It happens gradually. When you first watch that happen to a specific child, what are we seeing?
That they're learning that they don't matter, their voice doesn't matter, their opinions don't matter, that they're not significant, that they're irrelevant. But yet we know, as soon as they're given the opportunity to be the hero of their own story, in which they cannot be wrong because it's their story, so they quite simply cannot be wrong. They come to life, and they love the idea that they're co-creating for each other, that there's this new genre emerging of children creating for children, that they're listening to each other, enjoying, up-leveling, celebrating each other's work.
You built something that's changing how children are heard across the country and now the world, really. It's landing in front of Parliament, crossing international borders, and yet you still have 1 hour a week to do it. How do you hold both of these things at the same time?
Increasingly with gratitude, Amy, because increasingly, it was India first, actually. India picked up on us and put me on the front cover of a magazine, gave me a Women's Leadership Award, given me some icon status. And there was this immense gratitude of that I was being heard, that I was being recognised. And this was by the physiotherapy community. So the recognition that what I'd learned as a physiotherapist, I'd transferred to our situation. And India were not frightened of telling our story. They put me on the magazine on FaceTime to Gabriel. In the former colonies are celebrating my competence. And Nigeria has certainly enjoyed asking again and again, this is you. You're in the UK. This happened to you in the UK. Yes. You're British. Yes. So there's an immense gratitude that we have created something that an international audience can get behind, because if I was limited to just the UK, there's a sort of national shame and denial that this is our truth. It was fine getting press when I was just talking about children's storytelling, but as soon as I took the lid off the truth, the story behind the story, it's a bit inconvenient. Well, what have you done wrong? What's wrong with you? There's that social judgment rather than actually there's this mountain of evidence that the system is broken. What's wrong with you? Because they don't want to admit that the brand Britain has done a good job. How do I hold both? Just knowing that eventually this is going to crack. I can't believe it hasn't yet. But I think Gabriel and I both took us seeing each other for 90 minutes the other day. But we keep going. That 90 minutes is going to become more than 90 minutes. Competed in sport at an international level. But I sense now that that's sort of where we've been driven to. You know, you've got to now perform as if you are an international athlete, because, you know, sport keeps being my reference point. You've got to now perform like that, because that seems to be your only way out of this. I do feel a lot safer thanks to international media and then articles I've written, that I feel like we've created a digital moat around us. And it's funny little things, Amy. I spoke to Gabriel the other week. We'd both had our haircut on a Saturday. There's funny little synchronicities like that I kind of think, come on, the train tracks are converging. This has defined our life now. Let us choose that it's going to have a positive definition.
I keep coming back to that Sunday morning. You didn't need a verdict. You didn't need a headline. You just needed to hear on an ordinary street, on an ordinary morning, that the truth was out there, moving around on its own. Why does that land so differently than everything else?
It's out in the open air. You can't stop what those market traders are talking about.
Thank you, Kate, for trusting us with your story today. The way you've turned constraint into craft and pain into methodology that is reaching hundreds of children and landing in front of Parliament. It is without question phenomenal, and if you haven't already, a follow, a like, or a 5-star review helps even more people find this community, and it genuinely means the world to me. Until next time, I'm Amy Boyle, and this is the Speaking of Phenomenal podcast.